This is a special meeting that I'm going to call to order in regards to our interviews yesterday with two candidates. And now we're gathered today to discuss recommendations. And I'll start with the man who has helped us through all of this, Pat, representing the DDA. And I'll turn it over to you for a few comments.
Good morning. Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, commissioners and staff. Yes, we've had an exciting couple days, and we're kind of wrapping up. Just to kind of give everybody background in terms of how we've arrived here. We conducted a search for a county administrator. We had a total of 41 applicants for that position. We've had some challenges, I will say, with individuals who have initially applied and withdrawn during the process, and so we put them through a process where we conduct assessments, we do video interviews, and we've also done background checks. We had interviews of 2 of those candidates yesterday, and we're here this morning, and we're going to receive input from a representative from the management team, as well as the public input for those who either were in person or remotely watched the interviews yesterday. So the goal at the end of the day, or at the end of this morning, is that we will have some discussion, and the board will make a decision how they would like to proceed. So.
Okay, thank you. And we've been reading through comments. We had a good amount of comments from the public. We had a good attendance here yesterday, so we have a lot that we sorted through and had a printout this morning of comments that we received. So I'm wondering, Mike, are you representing the MAT team?
I didn't know I was.
Oh, no, okay. You're observing, okay.
Yeah.
So Administrator Watkins?
Yeah. What would you like?
Oh, I'm
to
just
hear?
wondering if we have a representative from the MAT team, or if you're going to do that.
That'll be me.
That'll be
Yeah.
you,
Yep.
okay. Okay. Okay, so I'm just going to open it up for informal discussion and your opinions about how everything went out yesterday. We have our own opinions, and so I'll just open it up for discussion. Commissioner Gamble.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to make an overall statement that I really appreciate the input that has come from the public, their participation in that. I think that's commendable, and as commissioners who are representing our constituents in our different various districts, I just think it's great that we had as much input and that people took the time, and those comments are reflective of what I'd say thoughtful, consideration, and it helps confirm or support or inform, and that's always a positive thing. So I'm very appreciative, as I'm sure fellow commissioners are, and also relative to the MAT team. Just the process that has allowed that input is it's good and it's healthy, and you can tell by the content, especially in the effort that was invested by the MAT team, that the conversation was open and thoughtful and reflective of a group of people who are genuinely interested in creating a culture that helps them be effective and find a person that can enable them to do their jobs in a way that is beneficial for our county. And so I think that's reflected in the nature of the open and honest discussion. So it's just a heartfelt appreciation for all that participation in this process.
You're here.
6 pages. 6 pages of comments from the public, besides phone calls that I got. So,
And emails as well. I
Yes.
think, the fact that we got, I believe it was 48 online, and that we had lots of communication from the public just shows us how much people care, and they realize the significance and importance of this position.
Yeah, I was getting emails last night after 9:30. People were, wanting to share their thoughts. So I think this is a good process to think about for the future. We did not do that in the past. So I think it's a good way to involve people as we go along for whatever is facing us in the future. I don't know if anybody has any recommendations, if you want to discuss the observations that we had with the candidates, or if there's a recommendation as to how to move. Commissioner Mills?
I'll just cut to the chase, and my thoughts are very similar to kind of the tone and observations from the public as well as the MAT team. And that is that Mr. Ullman has incredible education and very relevant experience, though there's a concern about his fit within the county, as far as his management style and approach, maybe for, as Commissioner Gamble said, the building of the culture that we're looking for, and whereas Ms. Dross would maybe be a better fit, but does not maybe have quite the experience under her belt for a job to oversee the whole county. And so where I'm feeling is that we should repost the position. And I would like to compress the process a bit more. I feel like part of the reason why we lost candidates was just the length of time. And so if we can be a little quicker this time, I think that would do us. And I know there's lots of layoffs federally, and our pool would probably be very, very different this time around. So that's kind of my long and short of it, mostly short.
And I had some very similar thinking, Commissioner Mills, to you, thinking about the candidates, a lack of experience versus someone that is very experienced but didn't feel like it was a good fit for our community. And that was very much articulated and reflected in the comments that we all received. I like the idea of reposting with the idea that there may be many more applicants this time around than there were previously. And I would agree with the time compression, Pat, just from a standpoint of we had, at least on paper and with those video interviews, some very highly qualified candidates that seemed like they might be a good fit. We never got them here for those final interviews. But potentially, if we do have a shorter time frame with which we're working, it might help us to fill that position at this time.
Commissioner White?
the question is, don't take this personally, but are we staying with DDA for this?
I'm a big fan of DDA's process, and we've had good experience in the past. I think this was a good experience. I don't blame them for the challenges that we've had, and I really appreciate their expertise and network. So I would very much like to stay with DDA.
I feel that the process was good, that they listened to the things we wanted to add. For example, the rating sample related to values. I think there was a lot of flexibility and good communication. Again, if we could compress the time, then I would feel very comfortable with the same process.
Commissioner White, are you comfortable with reposting?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, absolutely. I am not, in a lot of time to think yesterday. And input from other people, there were just, I believe each of the candidates eliminated themselves by their omissions on their application from information that had come to me, accurate information after the fact, and it's something that I feel maybe should have been addressed, never public, but, just, and so that shows me that couple of things. Either you don't have the self-confidence to explain why something that seems bad or true or not is out there in social media to just state what it is, and so that's kind of dishonest, and we need honesty. And so they both had some great qualities, but by that thing, I would not consider them.
I was thinking about, I've been in a position a couple of times in the hot seat. I was really feeling, that's a tough place to be with 5 people questioning and then people in the back. So I think they did a good job with handling all of that. It's
Unnerving.
the composure and confidence that you have with everything coming at you was remarkable. Any other comments?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. It's healthy to go through this process and to have the participation that we've had with stakeholders. It informs and refines our ability to know, what we're looking for. I think the succinct response that came from the MAT team, one of the things that I think we should lift out of that is leadership style. And I'm not sure, because I came in partway in this process, I'm not sure if the MAT team has defined the leadership style that they believe would best suit our county. And I think moving forward, we should request that they would do that for us. It would help us to know. We've said that in a process, we have a consultant. The consultant provides a framework that brings discipline to a process to help us to make sure that we make an informed decision. But as we've gone through this process, we've learned some things that I think can benefit us if we can further nurture that partnership with our staff and the community to refine moving forward what it is we're looking for. And the other thing that I think that this whole interviewing process, which is putting somebody, it's like when you're called to the principal's office in many regards. It's just an uncomfortable situation because you're going to be up there front and center. So there is the human element. And I'd say in our evaluation, our awareness of that human element is vitally important. And so those qualities, those giftings, those things that come out in discussion in an interview, I think it's very important to see the person as we make this decision, because we're not trying to do this clinically. We're trying to be mindful of the human element as well. And affirm those things can help people that have been part of this process to move forward and achieve what they hope for, because we affirm those things that are positive. And it's a nurturing process, so we don't want this to come across as clinical, but there are disciplines that we have to stick to and still try to balance that human element with the evaluation process that we go through. Because the public has been part of this process and has listened into the interviews and is now listening in on this, or can listen in, how much we define as to our basis, our reasoning for our decision-making here is up to the board. I think we can say things sort of generically as an umbrella statement relative to, say, the MAT team. The MAT team, we had asked for them to provide input. We asked the community to provide input. And we've sort of touched on some things, but we haven't said things overall. And so I'm wondering if it might be advisable, based upon Rowan's assessment of this, if the MAT team response were read basically, because then public would understand the consensus of the MAT team. That might be advisable. We can't read through every comment that we've received and emails and everything else, but I think a lot of what we, I'll say, digested through this process and what the community has, that there is a general consensus. And I think the MAT team is a concise representation of that, and coming from our staff, who we want to support with good leadership, I think it might be advisable if the MAT team response was read, which would give a good overall for the public as to where we're at.
Commissioner White?
Explain MAT team. What does it mean?
Well, it used to
No,
be
no,
MAT
just
team.
What does MAT stand for?
Management Advisory Team, it's directors,
Yes.
department heads, or elected officials. Yeah.
And it's team.
Team,
right.
team. Okay.
Like ATM.
Commissioner Mills?
I'm not against reading the MAT team's letter recommendation, and I would just, I thought I summarized it fairly well, and I don't know that we need to get into details. One thing that I am wrestling with, and perhaps Pat can help and the rest of the board with your experience, when we're identifying what we're looking for, say, Commissioner Gamble, when you were suggesting the core values, you listed your top 5 values. And an applicant who may have watched that and then is asked what their top 5 values are can very easily respond to that and say, those are my top 5 values. It's a similar thing with the leadership style. I feel like I know what our staff's looking for with a leadership style, and I can name it. But if I name it, any applicant who's watching will say, that's my leadership style. Not any, but do you see what I'm saying? Like, it can be gamed. And I don't know, we want to be honest, we want to be transparent. I also want to be smart, and so I just don't know to what extent we're showing everything.
Did you want to direct that to Pat?
I'm just looking for input from any, I guess Pat first, please, just if you have a thought there.
Typically, individuals who are looking to apply for a position will look back and see what information they can gather from previous discussions that maybe the board has had. So certainly, laying your cards out and saying, this is exactly what we're looking for, but that's what we do in the profile is, this is what we're looking for. What we really want to focus in on is, demonstrate, tell us how your past experience demonstrates that you do have these values. Don't just verbally tell us, I've got all the 5 values that you guys want, but show us. So it could go either way, but it's a good point that you do bring up, Commissioner Mills.
Commissioner Gamble?
Thank you, Madam Chair. What I would say is I agree. I mean, a couple observations. One is that the more that we can define what it is we're looking for and limit that, like you could say applicants that apply need to da-da-da-da-da-da-da. That rules out a number of people that might encumber the process, but the more that you define clearly what it is you're looking for, and even in the interview yesterday, it came out that people want to know expectation. And when they get in a position, they want to know what is expected of me. So what we're saying in when we're looking for a pool of individuals to interview is these are what we're looking for. And the more we can define that clearly and understand it ourselves, the better it is that resonates with the applicant. And unfortunately, the interview process in our present culture, whatever you want to refer to that, is encumbered by restrictions that don't allow us to mine out those things that really connect to what we're looking for. because we can't clearly have discussions that we have to be consistent in how we ask our questions, this and that, the other. And some of these things are strictures to ability to really know the person. And if you have had any experience when you're interviewing somebody, you can ask it this way and that way, so that the person that's Google searching, what does it mean to have integrity and what's a good response? Here's an example, that they have to, you ask it multiple ways, and then you get to it, the heart of it, and then you know that they know it because they couldn't be able to speak to it other than speaking to it by rote, and that's not what we're looking for. As to the disclosure, excuse me, because we're looking at this in the context of multiple values, the only reason to read that I brought it up is from the standpoint of just wanting the public to know we're willing to be forthright and open and give you a sense of this. But if the board feels that the general overview, that there was consistency, both from the MAT team, well thought out, which was very heartening to me to see the openness, the honesty, and the ability to concisely represent that to us as decision makers. Because if I was a member of the leadership team and I had elected officials that I didn't know where they're going to go with my life, it's hugely important that we are active listeners, and that the people that inform us are active participants. So I'm comfortable out of the human factor saying we sort of represent the overall, and we don't necessarily have to get into any more detail than that. It was looking at the value of reflecting to our stakeholders that we want to be forthright and open. That's the only reason I brought that up. But the other side of it is, where do we find the balance? So.
And I think a lot of that balance is when you post, you have the priorities and you have all of that listed for them to respond to. We're not looking for a saint, because that would be impossible. But we want someone who could be the most in the leadership that we're looking for. So, if there's, yes.
Just one point I want to maybe iron out a little bit more. I heard from you about having kind of an expedited process. You know, based on the schedule that we obviously had some challenges as some people withdrew applications. You know, our process involves obviously the video interviews, the assessments, and all that. Are you talking about, when you're saying you want a different process, removing some of that? Because that's the process, and based on that, that's how we feel comfortable being able to say that if this person leaves in less than 2 years, we'll come back and work with you to do another recruitment. So I'm just, I guess, asking the question, are you asking to remove some of that in order to speed up the process? You know, otherwise, I'm sure, you know, if you're willing to have some special meetings, we can maybe try and get through it as quick as possible, but yet we still have to give time for individuals to do those assessments, and our background checks, for instance, those get sent out to a third party, so there's a waiting period there that we have to give them so much time before we can expect results. So just maybe a little clarification on expedited. We won't have to go through the creation of a profile, so that will be certainly shorter. But
I believe the video is really important as one of the aspects. Commissioner Sullivan?
I think all of those pieces are important. And what I look at is that we shouldn't be waiting for a board meeting to take any kind of action, that having some special meetings specifically focused on this is really important for us to do. Time is of the essence, but we don't want to make a mistake hiring. We wait till we are confident that we have the right individual and the right fit for our community and for our staff. I think that's important. And clearly, our community and staff felt the same way about both candidates.
Yeah.
It's very reassuring to me that we all are thinking in such a similar fashion. And I do think it comes back to, we have the job description, we have the profile, there are things in place now. We don't have a winter break to deal with. There are a number of things so that we can get the ball rolling in a quicker fashion.
Commissioner White?
I disagree about the online videos. I get more out of the in-person, but I would suggest, because I've seen this before, where they receive, did they ever receive a paper copy? Were they ever able to see the questions they had to answer for us, before they came in here to talk to us?
Before the interview questions.
So
those
they
are-
only heard it verbally from us. They couldn't they didn't have it written in front of them at all.
Correct, they
So
did not.
in another situations, everything was the same. There's no video interviews. But the candidates, just before the in-person interviews, were given the questions they were going to be asked, and they had 5 minutes to answer them. And then they got to decide then they knew how many questions there were coming up and whether they should really expound on one or not. And I just, personally, if you're nervous and you can hold on to something, it helps to steady. But that's, but you're right about expedite. We need to move this, because my second thing is interim Rowan Watkins. We are, at some point, he's going to sour on this. He's pulling, don't answer. Past history, having stepped forward to fill in or to do something because nobody else could, and this is the way you could do it, and you think it's going to go this way, and it's going to take this long, and then it goes this way, and it's taking this long, and you keep your word, you do your commitment, you do it with your outward facade of we're doing a good job and you rah-rah, but inside it's just not good. And so, I do not want I won't even say that, our employee to get to that point. And in consideration and respect for his family, which is more important than all of this, I believe we need to somehow get him out of there and back into his office.
Commissioner Mills?
Thank you, and I agree, it's just that's a little ahead of where we are right now. We need to take care of other things first, and then we can address that, but I agree 100%.
I didn't want it to get lost.
No, yes, definitely not. I don't think Rowan will allow that either. Babe, I like every aspect of the interview. I greatly value the videos. What I was thinking is just the posting time, reducing that. Because if people are looking, they're on it, and it's shaking the dice as far as who's looking when. So the length of time, sure, casts a broader net, but I think that, in my mind, is the best place to compress. Also, side note, I would very much like for us to take those tests.
I'm sorry?
I would like us to take those tests, both the personality as well as the intelligence. That would give us a lot of perspective on what they are and what they show, and I'm just a curious individual, so. As long as it doesn't hold up the process.
Yes. I've never had that request before, but yeah, I will certainly check.
Gold star.
Commissioner Gamble?
Thank you, Madam Chair. The MAT team recommendation and recognizing and respecting, the role that Rowan has willingly accepted. And as we've gone along in this process and we've looked at it and we've been mindful of that, we've always said, so how you doing? And he mans up and says, I'm doing okay, but he sits here as an inanimate object as we have this discussion about him. But the MAT team says we need to look at opportunities, resources that are out there that can help that. And so as decision makers, what we're saying is this is a recommendation, this is a realization, this is empathy, and this is respect. And so, yes, I would agree. Let's look at resources so that we can find, again, this balance between moving forward and getting it right and adhering to the disciplines that are important to this process. So we aren't short-circuiting it because of concern of time, but we're keeping the integrity in the process, but we're also hearing, and especially from fellow employees, that we appreciate and respect what Rowan has done. Can we get some support for him so we balance that as we move forward? I think all of those things speak to the integrity of our ultimate goal, as Commissioner has said, that we want to get the right person. And we've said this many times, and for me, coming in this term as Commissioner, I've been waiting to sort of see the substance of the reality of those words that we say in our actions. And we find ourselves here doing that. And to me, that is heartening, because we understand how important it is to our community and our staff. We want to create a culture and an environment where they enjoy coming to work and serving the people that are the people in this community. Those aren't just words. Those are things that have substance when they work out right. And it's up to us, not because we're trying to put any sense of special recognition, but because of what we stepped up to do. We better do this right. And therefore, I would make a recommendation that that we move forward, we reopen it up, and we look into refining our expectations for that position. Understand what the MAT team, when they say leadership style, let's make sure that that's represented in what we're saying we're looking for. We're looking for somebody that has these qualities and this style. And we do not want to pride ourselves in the fact that we have a lot of people applying. We want the right people applying. And if it's 3 people that meet those qualifications as clearly identified, we'll celebrate that, because that is our stewardship of time and resource. We're not looking at numbers, we're looking at, be sure that we've identified clearly what we're looking for. So if we need to have a special time to be able to do that as a board, to ask for some of these things to help refine where we're going to move forward, we need to do that. So as what I see is, I would make a motion that we move forward. We appreciate the participation of those that have taken the time to go along on this journey with us, but we need to move forward, and we need to get some clarification on what we want to put in the expectations. We want to know leadership style from the MAT team and anything else that they'd like to contribute to help us do our jobs well. And then we need to look at resources that can come alongside to support Rowan in this role that he's willingly taken on our behalf.
So we have a motion
Who else?
to move forward, to repost the position, and to support, I don't know, I'd rather have 2 separate, I'd rather have a separate motion for reposting, period. Then we move on in general for a position or some additional help with Rowan Watkins, so.
Okay, Madam Chair, I would amend my motion then that I move that we move forward to repost the position.
Support.
Any questions or comments? I would ask Pat, the time frame within the posting, you said that you'd have to do background checks and so forth. There's no way to say within this 3-week period, March 15th to April 1st. Does that seem like a couple of weeks for people to have a chance to apply? Is 2 weeks not enough? Is 3 weeks too much? Or maybe you have to kind of sort that out as they're posting themselves for the job.
Yeah, I can't predict. I'm
Yeah.
not sure how many would be, typically what we find in a lot of postings is that people, and they tend to be maybe the more qualified ones, tend to wait towards the end, and I don't know if that's because they're doing research into the community, or, you know, sometimes they don't want to do it too early. They want to postpone notifying their current employer that they're, but for whatever reason, that's a trend that we typically see. But I wouldn't know. What I have done with some other communities when we've run into a situation like this is we simply post and then just say that the position is open until filled. That way you're able to kind of, let's see how it goes. If it's 2 weeks and you have, like you mentioned, 3 qualified applicants, you can say, okay, we're going to go ahead and schedule interviews. If, you know, 2 weeks out, you don't have the qualified applicants that you're looking for, you just, you know, keep it going and
Keep going.
wait until you come to that point.
Okay, all right. Commissioner Mills?
I'm assuming it would be too onerous to, as you say, post until filled, and then as applicants come in, you give them the video, and we get one at a time sort of thing as they come in. Is that, you'd rather do like a batch, I'm assuming, or? Okay,
Yes,
okay.
yes. We would prefer a batch,
Yeah.
just to, you know,
Yeah.
2 or 3 good ones come across, something like that, then we would put them through the process. Otherwise, you've got people starting at different times. and it just-
Absolutely.
And then you, as the
Mhm.
county board, are having an interview here, and an interview here, and it just kind of chops everything up
Yeah,
a lot.
yeah,
It's
disjointed.
difficult.
And then, you know, I just, well, I guess I want to express to Commissioner Gamble that to create these, this profile, we did talk, the MAT team did have input. And so I feel like the leadership style is communicated in those desired attributes. You kind of have to read between the lines maybe, or put lines together, but I feel like that pretty clearly represents what we're looking for. And again, I don't want to name it. I can very easily name it, but I think that all the information is there, and it's just up to us when we do the interviews to see if that's demonstrated. But maybe it needs to be clearer, but again, I don't necessarily want to show all the cards.
Commissioner Gamble?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Commissioner. I guess that can be answered, you know, by the MAT team. If the MAT team, and as I said, you know, I've come into this midstream, but if the MAT team has done that, and it's clear to us, and we feel that it's clear to the applicant to understand that, some people it's wishful thinking, hoping that they can maybe, you know, aspire to that position, and they aren't looking at that detail. Other people look at it and say, well, they're asking for something I don't, that's just not who I am. And so it's going to weed them out. And that's why I'm saying the more that we are clear on expectation, the better pool we're going to get. And if the MAT team feels that if this comment from the MAT team had said that we don't feel that the leadership style, as we have identified in our previous input to the board, then that would assure me that we've been pretty thorough and clear on that communication. But because wasn't part of that process, I don't know if that's the case. All I know, it's an important thing, and so I'm saying, okay, what is that? You know, and so what I would like to see is, I would like to see, following this motion, if the board agrees to move forward, is I would like to see us regroup, and I'd like to have that discussion moving forward, so that given this direction, that the MAT team, whatever, that we can say, here's what we're going to do moving in, so that we aren't necessarily too reactionary, but we're more intentional based upon, like I said, our experience to this point. So in the interest of both time and learning from where we're at today, it would be good to have a more of an in-depth discussion as to how we're going to facilitate this with concerns about time, and yet keeping the integrity of process in place. That's just sort of my sense of things.
Madam Chair, thank you. I know there's a motion on the table. I'll try to be as concise as I can. Touch on a few different items. The MAT team, in writing the response to the board, they did write it with a certain amount of expectation that there was a possibility that the letter would be read aloud. So if that is what the board would like to see, the MAT team is comfortable with that, and I'd be happy to do that. Another thing, to the point about the values being stated and the candidates potentially being able to speak to that because of them being put forward, that in a way that came up in our meeting as well, that it felt that there was some of that was happening. Another thing that came up that's related to that was a question as to the format that we put the candidates through. You mentioned them getting the interview questions kind of on the spot, right when you come in. Well, because we're live streaming, it does the second candidate or the third or fourth that later have the advantage of watching the live stream and seeing those interview questions in advance, and does that put our first interviewee at a disadvantage? And so that was another thing that was brought up. Again, I'd be happy to read the full email, but the last sentence as it comes up, as we've talked a little bit about it, if neither candidate is selected, the MAT team urges the commissioners to consider alternate interim administrator arrangements to support the current interim administrator returning to his role, as well as continued support for the administrative staff. And I don't want that to get lost, that last part as well, for Jana. A lot of stuff gets thrown her way, and having additional support for her there. And to me specifically, when I was asked to consider if I would do this, I came before the board. It was pretty short notice and under pretty tragic circumstances, obviously. And at the time, I don't know if I expected it, but I hoped, I think it's fair to say that, James would take as much time as he needed, 12 weeks or whatever it was, and that he would come back. To his credit, really quickly, he let us know that that's not what was going to happen. And to the board's credit, they moved really quickly to have the appropriate conversation, I felt, about whether or not we wanted to continue with the administrative form of government or not. I said then, and I think there's never a more appropriate time to have that conversation and reassess that when somebody's not in that role. And unanimously, the board, for a lot of different reasons that we talked about at that meeting, decided that that is the way that they want to go. And there was a lot of MAT team support for that then as well. And again, to the board's credit, moved pretty quickly to work with DDA and start this process. And it's an important process and a long process because of the importance of it. But to that point, and to me personally, I was willing to stick with us because of the board's commitment to make those decisions quickly and move forward in the way that they did. And to me, now, as the board's considering reposting and putting this position back out, it feels like an appropriate time for me to step back from this role, and for the board to also consider alternative options to continue the support for the board, the organization, the administrative staff, Jana. And so that's, I just want to say that out loud and be clear about it, that that's what I would like to see and what I would ask for. As we went through this hiring process and getting down to the finalists, and Pat made mention to some of the challenges we had with candidates withdrawing, this became a concern of mine. What if, right? What if we don't have enough people? What if we don't have the right people? What does that look like? What are our options there? And so I asked some of those questions, and Pat could probably speak to this a little bit better, but something that had come to mind to me, because it was something that we had done actually in PHHS pretty recently, was hire temp staff on a contract basis. And so I asked the question, is that something that exists for county administrators? And I was pleasantly surprised to find out that indeed it does, and that the League of Minnesota Cities keeps a list of retired administrators, professionals that would come in and fill that role. And I haven't shared that with the board, and it's not a recommendation of mine, it's just an option that I want the board to know that exists out there as you have this next conversation in consideration with what I've said here today.
What I'd like to do is take a vote, so we don't lose it. The conversation. Okay. So we had a motion and a second that we repost our position for the administrative position.
And I seconded.
And
I'll
you did.
second just that part of it, yes.
And we might want to, Madam Chair, just amend the motion that I made, just with appreciation for those that have participated in this process today.
Well, and then we can add that we're going to do it with DDA, so. you know,
Well, I'm just saying
Yeah.
that in the
Well, we
motion,
do.
that
We
we're
have
just
that.
saying, we're going to repost, but we appreciate those that have,
Okay.
participated in the process.
that's
Support if
fine.
necessary, yep.
Yeah, okay. I'm going to ask for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. There we are. Okay, I'm wondering, as Rowan is explaining maybe another step or two, and this is fresh in our mind, and we're kind of looking to the MAT team for a little bit more specific ideas on leadership. Would this be something to discuss at Committee of the Whole next week?
Certainly could be.
Is there anything lined up yet?
Yes, we will have a topic for the Committee of the Whole for sure.
Okay,
So yes, there's one topic that
one now.
sort of time sensitive will need to come up
Yeah.
again, yeah.
So one, okay. Could this be another one, I'm asking the board?
This
Commissioner
has to be
Gamble?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, and as I expressed before, I think it would be good to have that discussion. I think the things that have come to our attention at this point in time and looking at resources that we might be able to find out about somebody that'd step in that interim role. And certainly, as decision makers, it'd be a lot easier if we could have just made a decision and then all these things would go away, but that's not the case, and that's, to me, I think it affirms the integrity of process that we want to get it right, as Commissioner Sullivan has said. And so I think that we put this as a topic, and then things that need to be in place prior to that is to research out our options to find out what it would be, what it would cost, and how open-ended it is. And then also just in refinement, as you've said, Commissioner Storley, that from the MAT team, so that if anything we can do to help us get it right, that would be beneficial. So I think being aware of this today, making the decision that we have made, and then putting it on the agenda for a future meeting, I think that'd be great.
Also, just to put it out in the community, you know, maybe we have somebody in the community that would step up for a little while.
Yeah,
So I'm putting it out in the community.
that's true.
Commissioner Mills.
I would rather address it today. And I guess my question for Rowan is that knowing, and Jana, knowing the burden that has been placed on you these last 12 weeks or whatever, 14 weeks, thank you.
Is it 14
I
weeks?
don't know.
16?
We'll be coming up on 6 months. It was October.
Yeah.
He's got a thing on his door frame in the house that he keeps marking.
Right. And everyone should know that my statement that I made, I came up with that on my own last night before I saw the MAT thing. It was like, this is ridiculous. He needs to get back to his family.
Yeah, yeah.
So, 6 months, these last 6 months. Is it practical for us to ask another staff member or department head to do that? Or, I am familiar with the interim outside interim hire, and typically they're, I think, very solid, spot on. Granted, they don't have the inner workings understood necessarily, but they're very adept, and I think it could be very, very productive, and would also give us perspective on what we're maybe looking for or not looking for. And so I'm a big fan of that. But there's nobody who knows our organization better than the department heads. And so I would lean there. I'm just concerned about that load on other staff members.
Yeah, I appreciate the question, and I think it, we have a couple department heads here in the room, and Brady at the table, that were part of that MAT team conversation, and I would welcome them to jump in here, but we talked about that. I wanted to be clear and open with the MAT team about my intentions and as to it relating to the recommendation that they were about to send. That if the recommendation from the MAT team, as we put it back out there, and should that come to pass, I intend to, respectfully request a return to my role, and that entails, likely a change at the leadership level of some kind, and that they should be aware of that. And we talked about, are there other department heads that would be willing to do that? Nobody raised their hand. And we talked about the League of Minnesota Cities, and I and the interim administrators, and while we didn't put that in our response, I think it's fair to say that was the leaning of the group, and I'm looking at the department heads in the room and at the table for affirmation there, but that was my recollection, that was talked about as a good option, and that there was nobody vocally opposed to that.
Mr. Gamble?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Roan, for the input, and Commissioner Mills. My recommendation would be that there are, like in many of our decisions, there are pieces that we don't have in place to be able to make the informed decision. We should find out availability, we should find out costs, what it looks like. If there are people in the community that could step in that role, that, again, our responsibility is to try to balance our respect, for the service that you provide in addition to your regular role with managing, the business of the community. If there's somebody internally that can do that, and that discussion is held, and if there's somebody in the community, or if we use an outside resource, I think we need to find out those options, mindful of the timelines of things, but I don't think that we can make that decision today, other than what's driving us, I believe, is our respect for you. And so it's, I would recommend, let's find out what our options are in a short term as much as we can. Research those things, refine our expectations from the MAT team, letting them know we are decision yet makers, yes, but we want to know. And to the extent that we've done that, this is an opportunity just to revisit that. So let's do this, get those pieces that inform our decision, and then move forward with a well-informed plan from this point. That's my sense of it.
And maybe you want to make next Tuesday a special meeting in case you're ready to make a decision.
Other than
Might not be.
Committee of the whole.
Right.
Well, committee of the whole is
After committee of the whole.
Yeah, before or after.
So how would we reach out to the League of Cities?
I defer to our, Pat.
I think it's simply a matter of reviewing the list that they have of individuals. I don't know if there's a preference for somebody with county experience, because there are some people that have all city experience, and there are people that have more county. Identify those names, and then simply reach out to them and inquire as to their availability and cost, and maybe put together a few options, and I can certainly assist with that.
Be nice if we could find someone in Duluth. I would guess they'd have probably lists even being a bigger city. Commissioner Mills?
So there's not an agency that has interims?
Correct, it's
Oh,
not,
okay.
not an
Okay.
agency, it's individuals who have indicated they would be willing to do this type of service, that have notified the League of Minnesota Cities, and they just
Okay.
have a list, so, you know, they may be working other jobs right now, but, you know, I think what you'd be looking at is somebody who's willing to come up here, you know, 3 or 4 days a week, and, you know, serve as your county administrator until a time where you no longer need the person. So, yeah, it would be a matter of contacting them individually, asking about their availability, and then inquiring would they be interested and what would be the cost.
And, yeah, my knowledge is more around, I guess, national organizations that have that
Oh.
reach, and so I don't know if NACO would have some more resources we could tap into, but I'm a little surprised there isn't an agency there, so business niche there, if anyone's listening. I agree we need to look at those, but I think we can go ahead and make a motion to start looking, start searching, and then at our Tuesday meeting, we can review and maybe take action. Is that practical?
So what we would do is we would put together a new timeline, lay out the steps and everything, and then I would just, look for your approval to, and it could be through committee of the whole, or it could just be Rowan saying, yes, this schedule looks good, let's proceed.
I guess I meant as far as an interim is concerned.
Oh, as far as the interim?
Mhm.
Yeah, it would just be a matter of you finding someone that you'd be comfortable with and agreeing to whatever that cost may be. As simple as that, and, you know, getting somebody obviously up here as soon as possible.
So Tuesday's not practical.
Yeah, I think that would be pretty quick. I mean,
Yeah.
I'll get back and we'll try and reach out to people and contact them, and I don't even know currently who's on the list. You know, I don't know if it will be a challenge. Obviously, in our recruitment, one of the challenges was, you know, the area. Beautiful up here, but housing is,
You got to really want it.
yes. Yes, so the same would be true for finding an interim. We're gonna have to find someone who's willing to come up here. And so I don't know how, you know, we may go through that list and we may not find anybody, to be honest. But I would guess that there will be some individuals who'll be willing to come, and some of them with county experience. If you're also willing to consider individuals who just have city experience, that kind of opens the net a little bit.
My preference personally would for sure be county experience, but I am open to city experience. It's just typically cities don't have, I guess larger cities maybe would have the scope of work that counties do, but I guess that's the board decision.
Okay. Commissioner Gamble?
Thank you, Madam Chair. My recommendation would be, I mean, any of these agencies, and it's certainly something that is a provision on many different areas, just not in county governance, where you have somebody that is out there that has been retired and is knowledgeable and can step in. So I would say it's normal to avail yourself of that resource. And in this particular situation, I would agree, county administrator, that list is available and we would have access. If it's something where you don't have to belong to something in order to be able to use a resource, you would find that out. But my sense of things is that if Rowan were willing, that Rowan would just access that list and he would make the call, because he would be best to be able to identify that connection that resonates with who we are. In other words, he knows what you're doing at this point, what the needs are, and how things are distributed, so the person that you're talking to knows expectation based upon your experience in the role as intern. So to me, it's saying, let's access the list and let's look. The other two components, which was asked yesterday, is there anybody internally, based upon what we know, and they are going to be the closest to understanding, what our needs are, or in the community. That's the other, just depends upon how you want to throw that net. But I think that we can just get the list, and then if Rowan's willing to do that, we could do some prep work and say, find out who's available, and then refer them to Rowan, so good to have that discussion, so there'd be clarity on the expectation.
Commissioner White?
I'm sure we've got retired administrators living in this county, I can't think of the word, either retired or they have cabins. We found that with school superintendents. There were a lot of them up here at one point. So if we could put that out for,
Well, I know two myself,
well, there you go.
but they're not willing.
Oh,
It's- yeah.
but, I mean, we also need just, who do we have that's here right now? Short term, we promise. Just for a little bit, and we'll make it as easy for them as we can. There are 5 commissioners besides department heads, and we have an incredible, I think, from my limited observations, that we've got good people working who know their jobs and are conscientious. So I think someone coming in can just kind of be a figurehead for us for a while.
So we have the possibility of getting the names, if Rowan would have a little more time to get the names and we review all of that?
The names, as in the list that the League of Minnesota Cities keeps?
Yep.
Yeah, I could work with Pat, I would assume, to get that list and be willing to provide it at Tuesday's board
Right.
meeting. Yeah, definitely.
Commissioner Mills?
Yeah, and if we're talking recruitment for the interim, I don't think it's appropriate to have our interim administrator do it. I would highly recommend either our HR director, or I think our consultant. I think that's a more appropriate use of roles. I'm sure there's a fee for that from DDA, but that's something I think we should talk about, rather than put the burden on a staff member who has already expressed a desire to move on. I think that's probably the most sensitive approach. No offense, or.
None taken.
I think we were referring to his position, and he could kind of sort the names out in terms of what was needed here, but.
Well, that's what I'm
I
talking
think,
about, too.
yes, to remove Rowan from that and to work with Pat.
And meanwhile, the administrative assistant, I wish the camera was on her. She has got great facial expressions about, oh, please, please don't suggest that I do this, so.
Rowan?
My thought on it would be that I could work in partnership with Pat and Allison, our HR director, on this. I think I see value in all sides of that. I think the expertise and what DDA brings, and the appropriateness of having the HR director involved. And I would see, my involvement there as just providing context to the work and the projects that are happening right now, and where priorities and skill sets should be emphasized.
Thank you for doing that, for sure. Commissioner Gamble?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would make a motion that we proceed with the understanding that what's appropriate time-wise for, as Rona suggested, for consultant and HR and Rowan to take a look at that, find out what we can find out, all the aspects of that, and then for our Tuesday meeting to come with that information so we would make a decision moving forward. And then also between now and that Tuesday meeting, if the MAT team would like to provide any other input that would help us to be able to refine the process, we'd like that for the Tuesday meeting. Then I think we'd have in place the things that we need as commissioners to make a decision, an informed decision, moving forward. That would be my recommendation, and that's my motion, that we pursue, as I suggested, using our intern, our HR, and our consultant to see possibilities for an intern, and to ask the MAT team to provide any other input that they'd like to for Tuesday meeting.
Support.
Okay, any further comments or questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Okay. Any discussion about anything else that we need to? I have an announcement to make, too.
Yeah, I'd just like to know for public consumption how Commissioner White is doing.
I'm just fine as a person who doesn't share her life with people. I am just fine.
Thank you.
And you can define fine however you'd like to.
Well, Commissioner Sullivan did, back in the end of January, request that Senator Hochschild come up to have a town hall meeting. And so we've been working with his assistant, and finally we got a response that he's coming next Friday, March 21st, from 10 o'clock until 11:30. And in the interim, this room has been reserved for that. You know, that wasn't set up ahead of time. I was thinking about other places we could meet, but the room is reserved, so I'm going to work with Jana on the list to send out to folks who might want to join us. I know department heads, too, might want to be here. The board went down to meet with Senator Hochschild, but the department heads were not available for that. So we'll just put the word out. I do not know after 11:30 what's going on. I did understand that he maybe has another session with other people while he's up here, but our time is from 10 to 11:30, so we'll plan on meeting here. Commissioner Sullivan?
I just wanted to share the email that I received from Jamie, who is Senator Hochschild's assistant, indicates that this is for the county from 10 to 11:30. It indicates county board members, staff, and other stakeholders. And so I would recommend that we have our department heads engaged. Obviously, we had one-pagers and information that we shared with both our representative and our senator when we were in St. Paul, but that we make sure that they have an opportunity to meet with Senator Hochschild. And then if there are additional time slots, that we have our community leaders who have provided us with information to share, welcome to attend those remaining slots. In the email, it does not state anything in particular about Representative Scraba, so I will reach out today and see if I can get a confirmation. I know he did have it in his calendar when we were down there, but I will double check.
Okay. Anything else?
Oh.
Commissioner Mills?
Yeah, I really appreciate learning about the schedule there, and I guess I feel like we have a pretty good line to Senator Hochschild and Representative Scraba, so I would hope that we could emphasize department heads and community leaders.
Precisely.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
We'll get the list going. Okay. Anything else? Okay, so at this time,
Motion to adjourn?
Support?
Is that what you
the words
want?
right out of my mouth.
Yeah, okay.
There's
David supported already.
motion to adjourn, is there a second?
Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Unanimously.
What's the date of the Hochschild?
Next Friday.
Gary?
It is.
Gary,
It's a lot
there's a NERC meeting.
for myself to
I mean, there's an ARC meeting